maybe once things settle down a little, we will resume the conversation.
That would be nice. So, yeah, let's chat when you are ready, okay?
Dr. Jain, where are you?
Well, I used to live in Houston for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And 3 years ago, we moved to Las Vegas.
That's
So we are closer to Vina.
You're right. Well, you know, I was saying that you know, I studied at Berkeley, and I in fact I'm still am assistant to Professor Padmanabh Jaini, who you must know. So he's really he's my ultimate guru, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you doing at Berkeley?
I did my PhD there in South Asian Studies. So I was
nice.
I was Professor Jaini's research assistant for eight years. Yeah.
I did my postdoc at Berkeley.
Oh, great. Berkeley is just a you know, a swarga of kinds, you know, just a beautiful, wonderful, special place.
Shall we begin, Srinivas-ji, Professor Subramanian?
Sure.
Yes, Srinivas, go ahead, please.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. Thank you for everyone who's come, many people from class and many visitors from all around. It's a pleasure and a joy to welcome you to I think the last in our lecture series in celebration of Mahatma Gandhi's 150th birth anniversary. So this is a lecture series run by the Center for Indic Studies at UMass Dartmouth that we've been running for the last year. We're having a lecture almost every month. And the center has been in operation for, you know, many years and has been a hub for the study of various aspects of Indian history, culture, language. And it's been a pleasure to be associated with the center for many years. I wanted to just start maybe with what we do in class generally. It's something called 2 Minute Shanti, which is something that Gandhiji actually used to do at his prayer meetings, and something that I had learned from his grandson, Rajmohan Gandhi, Professor Rajmohan Gandhi, great historian. And also, you know, I was thinking we never did anything. And the last time, you know, Belaji and I met and many of us were together was with Professor Larkosh, who unfortunately suddenly passed away. So maybe just 2 minutes of silence in memory of a dear colleague and friend who is also part of the center. I'll ring the bell and then we'll stop, and then I'll introduce our wonderful speaker. So 2 Minute Shanti. Thank you very much. So my name is Professor Srinivas Reddy. I'm teaching a class called Science of Kriya Yoga this semester at UMass Dartmouth, and thankful that a lot of our students, I think all of them are here. We've had some wonderful discussions, and today it's a very special day in our class because we welcome a wonderful professor and guest to our university, Dr. Veena Howard, and I just met her a few minutes ago, and even though, as we were saying, Zoom is not the most ideal environment, you can get a sense of someone just in a few minutes, and I'm really looking forward to her presentation. She is I can tell already a very beautiful soul. So I'll just give a short introduction to her biography, which is quite impressive. Dr. Howard is Associate Professor of Asian Religious Traditions in the Department of Philosophy at California State University in Fresno. She is also the coordinator of the Peace and Conflict Studies program there. Her publications include several books, including the Bloomsbury Research Handbook of Indian Philosophy and Gender, published in 2019, Dharma, Hindu, Jain, Buddhist, and Sikh Traditions of India, 2017, and Gandhi's Ascetic Activism, Renunciation and Social Action, published by SUNY Press in 2013. She's authored a number of peer-reviewed articles, more than I could probably list now, but particularly on the Sant tradition of Bihar, which is a very fascinating tradition. And she's also translated 3 books from the modern Sant tradition from Hindi into English. She's also serves on the Board of Trustees of the Parliament of World Religions. So it's a great honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Veena Howard, who will present on Gandhi's philosophy of Sarvodaya, upliftment for all, moral methods, and critical challenges. Dr. Howard, welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. And it's a delight and pleasure to be all with you in little boxes. And I see my department chair has joined us, Dr. Maldonado, and maybe some of my students. So it's great to be here. Thanks so much, Bela, for all your work. And thank you, Professor Sengupta, for your work, for putting this all together. So I chose the topic Sarvodaya, which means uplift of all. The reason because right now what we are seeing, there is a tension of those who have and those we don't have or don't have enough. And I think we need to really revisit Gandhi's principles, Gandhi's ideas in this respect. As we know, we were supposed to do this talk, Gandhi at 150, but it continues. The celebrations are continuing. It seems like 2020 just disappeared, so we don't count that. So it's still culminating what I started. We had a big conference at Fresno State in October 2019. And so I am culminating those events this semester. So because 2020 doesn't count, right? It just went somewhere, and I hope never visit like that again. Just to show that 1969, 1948, now we just had January 30th, 73rd day or anniversary of Gandhi's martyrdom day or assassination when he was assassinated. So what he says is nonviolence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. It is mightier than the mightiest weapon. And it's so unfortunate that he was made the target of a bullet because he gave up his life defending nonviolence, even though he was subjected to violence and many forms of violence in his life. So what I would like our students or participants to do, if there is a question and I'm going too fast, maybe someone can just say, okay, can you explain this? Or say in the chat, or you can give me a cue so we don't just go. We'll treat it as a classroom, as your classroom, right? You don't want to be like a lecture that I'm just speaking and going too fast. So do please stop me. I'd rather have quality of presentation than quantity. And if we do less slides, it's good. because we want to make sure it's interactive. So let's make it interactive. Raise your hand or just speak up or say in the chat and we go from there. Is that good?
That
Sounds
sounds,
good.
Professor, yes?
yeah, that sounds great. And I can, I'll moderate the chat if you need anything.
Yeah, just say, whatever the question is and clarification is or comment is. I like my classes very interactive as well. So
Perfect.
this is famous image from Gandhi's Dandi March, and Albert Einstein's quote is, "Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this walked on this earth in flesh and blood." And whatever that means, we can really consider, reflect on. And I would like us to think for a moment, do we know such a one has walked on this earth in the recent history? So what Einstein is saying, I invite all of us to reflect on it for a moment. What does he mean by that when he says that such a one scarcely walked in flesh and blood walks on this earth? So we know Gandhi the Mahatma. Gandhi was known as, I think you just called me a good soul, and Gandhi was known as the great soul. So when you said the good soul, and good soul is recognized by you, but the great soul is recognized by everyone. So the goal is to be a great soul. And it's that each one of us has the potential to be the great soul. And I always think about this picture as when I was a little girl, we had a white uniform. This is not my picture because I don't have too many photos, but I will imagine like that little goodie will be standing next to the Gandhi statue and posing. But what happened recently, some of you might know it, that great soul, or I will call it nonviolence, it's been attacked at Davis. I don't know, some of you know that the Gandhi statue was demolished and desecrated 2 days before the January 30th day. So again, the question is, what are we afraid of when we see Gandhi's bronze statue or, clay statue or a picture? What are we afraid of that we killed the man was killed, right? And now even his symbolism is under attack, right? And again, I want our students to think about why that it's not like the removal of the federal or federalists or the racist people. It's something is different going on here. And there's much has been written about the threat of Gandhi, why Gandhi is really is scary for some people or some thought processes. So what is going on here as a scholar, as a student, as a thinker? I'm not just thinking about who did it and how it happened. And I'm asking the question, why is this happening? And so this is the question all of us to think about it. What is threatening about this person that he was assassinated and then he has been targeted for many times? And here it is. I want you to laugh. My students love it. Star Wars, Twinkle in His Eyes. The film, or the movie, The Force Awakens, right? It is that he's never going to die. His ideas are never going to die. I mean, you can shoot him, you can drag his statue, but the ideas are that we should look up to, right? I'm more focused on the ideas than this is the image of the person. When I'm teaching in person, I have a lot of fun with students with this image, but it's hard to do that on Zoom. So Gandhi is not only been under attack, Gandhi's also been caricatured. His ideas have been just put on the t-shirt. And what does that mean? Gandhi says peace. I don't think Gandhi would say peace. Gandhi does peace. Gandhi acts peace. Gandhi lives peace. And then Gandhi says, relax. Really? If anything, this person will say not to relax ever. So it's kind of interesting that how, it's really saying Gandhi said chill, but it's not. He's so active and he's so into karma yogi. He's constantly bringing us together to act for helping others. So as we see that there are the 4 principles, all start with S and they are interconnected. Satyagraha, which some of you know. The reason I'm explaining everything, some of the students might not know all these words. So always never take anything for granted when I teach. If it was for adults, it will be different, but my young students, so I want to just make sure that we explain every term. So Satyagraha really is truth force, or holding on to the truth, or firmness in truth. And truth for Gandhi is not simply speaking truth. It's about living truth. And we'll talk about in discussion, what does it mean by when I live my truth? And what is truth that I live? What is its definition? For Gandhi, it includes ahimsa. Ahimsa, as you know, it is the central virtue in Jain tradition. And it is an important practice discipline in the Yoga Sutra and other yoga systems. It is an essential virtue according to the Mahabharata. Despite this big war toward the end, it's in the conversation with the Bhishma, the nonviolence or ahimsa is upheld. Because we know what happened with the violence in the Mahabharata war. So Gandhi says the Mahabharata war really teaches you that violence does not work. Then second, his principle is Swaraj, which is self-rule. And they're interconnected. Satyagraha, self-rule, Swadeshi, and Sarvodaya are almost like 4 legs of a table, which is freedom, which is not only the political freedom, it is personal freedom and spiritual freedom. So Swaraj is self-rule we can talk about as a political self-rule or within us, which is moksha, which is I have, or just like I have control on my own self. Not I'm so easily gullible, easily influenced by outside forces. And Gandhi lives Swaraj in his daily life. And he invites his people to live Swaraj in the daily life. And Swadeshi is use of local products of one's own region. We talk about I saw a bumper sticker on a car say, think globally and live locally. I thought, yep, Gandhi would say that. So it is that you have a very broad mindset. You have a really mindset, which is the whole world is your family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. But you have to support your region. Grown things in you. Now people are finally understanding the local products when I go to the grocery market are more expensive. And we want to buy that because we want to support our local farmers, right? So what he was thinking that when we have local economies, then we flourish. Our regions are flourish. And also what happens then we don't have to transport through all these big trucks and we don't, burn fossil fuel, all kinds of repercussions of not doing local. And then local also means regional languages. The one has to really not just speak other languages like English for us also. It's very important that we keep our regional languages alive, regional cultures alive, regional dances are alive, regional music alive, because those make us who we are. And then finally, the Sarvodaya, I think it has been very understudied idea of Gandhi. And Gandhi's idea of Sarvodaya was connected with his program. And I'll in a moment, I will talk about that how we can bring the whole people up, really means Udaya, up, all rise up, not the few people, but the whole society rises up. So Ruskin's Unto This Last was the source of Gandhi's philosophy of Sarvodaya. It's interesting that he really is inspired by a British thinker. And the beauty about Gandhi philosophy is that it really shows that you take the knowledge wherever it comes from, and you take it and make it your own. So he translates the text, right? And he makes it as a Sarvodaya. So he received a copy of Ruskin's book in 1904 while he's in South Africa. So he advances the concept, which is based on 3 basic principles. The first one is the good of the individual is contained in the good of all. When everyone does well, then everyone does well. So I think it is not that a few people do well, then we can have. And I think that's the Hindu idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and the Jain principle of interconnectedness of all beings. I mean, that's the way how can we be happy when our neighbor, our friends, even strangers are not doing well. Now, the second is very important, and this will, I think, we can generate a good discussion, that a lawyer's work has the same value as the barber's, in as much as all have the same right of earning their livelihood from their work. I really, when I teach this idea, we have a very, very interesting discussion. Lawyer's work, it has the same value as the barber's work. You know, where do I go for have a haircut? I can't go to a lawyer. You know, you have to have, you know, I'll be in trouble if I have a lawyer cutting my hair. So it is important that each person is valuable in their own right, right? It's not about, oh, went to school, I'm better than you. No, each work has a dignity. That a life of labor, the life of the tiller of the soil and the handicraftsman is a life worth living. So not our life should not be defined by, oh, I have a higher degree or I have a higher job and more wealth. It's about what I do in labor, what I work with my hands, what I am dedicated to, what's my calling is. These 3 principles are very, very challenging to us when we read them, right? Because we are just such a stratified society, and what's better and what's not. And he challenges that by those 3 principles. So what he does is connecting economic equality with societal issues and the well-being and the upliftment of all. At present, while some have utensils of gold and silver, others have not been, even post of clay. Some have garments of silk and brocade, whereas others have not even enough clothing to cover their nakedness. So the constructive program, as presented by me, is the only solution of the removal of such gross inequalities. So this constructive program that he develops, it's like I said, it's not much has been written, not has been received as much attention, because it really challenges us, and we feel as a societal being in today's world feel sort of scared of it. How are we going to do this? But to think about eating in the gold or silver utensils or eating in very, very fine china, it does not change how the food tastes, right? Tell me if it does. If I eat dal and rice in a gold platter. Make me feel good, perhaps. I don't know. I'd be too worried to get stolen by somebody, or, I don't know. But I think what he's trying to call us, that all this fanciness all around us, it does not change. And we can help others by living a simple life. So Gandhi's constructive program offers solutions, and also it challenges us. Economic equality is concerned to restoring human dignity. For Gandhi, everyone needs basic necessities to be fulfilled in order to be a healthy member of the society. When people don't have healthcare, food, shelter, clothing, education, it just, the society sort of doesn't work. So he is really so for economic equality, for just a moment, it's not that everybody should be rich. No, everybody should have a basic necessities fulfilled. The upliftment of the entire person through societal transformation. Here, people, we fail because it is not just the economic progress. He's talking about the entire person, emotional well-being, social well-being, family well-being, good health. So it's not just simply we are thinking about let's give money to people and they will be fine. He is really thinking about their full development and full health and flourishing as a human being. So Vinoba Bhave Sarvodaya movement, a case study that he does, but again, now it's just sort of fallen apart, right? Because people don't, if they change, but Gandhi wanted to see people change from within, that we continue doing good works. And, so these will be my 4 that I'll focus on. And let's see how far we can get. And if we don't get too far, we'll stop and I'll summarize the rest of it, okay? So far, so good? Okay. So Gandhi's constructive program, I don't know how many of you know about constructive program. Anybody do you see any raised hands? Of course.
Go ahead.
Who else?
You can explain. Please go ahead.
Okay. So the first one was the communal harmony. We know what happens when our communities have tensions. Let it be on the name of religion, let it be on the name of race, caste. It is a problem. So he wanted, here is a communal harmony. Hindu, Muslims, every caste, every person, despite their color, have this bond of humanity. There is something more that ties together with each other, one another, than it divides us. So he wanted to go to this human level where we can live in harmony. And the second was khadi, which is spinning. So khadi is a very coarse cloth, cotton cloth, hand spun. Gandhi really advocated for hand spinning. And I'll go into in a moment why did he emphasize so much? He just wanted people to be active and do something, be proud of what they have worn, their own cloth, also rejecting the foreign clothes, foreign fabric, so that we are self-sufficient. Village industries. Now we know how important it is that our rural areas are flourishing and they don't have to run to the cities. They have enough job opportunities in the villages, then the cities don't become crowded. So just pay attention how he's thinking. Prohibition. He was against, we know opioid crisis right now in the United States and in the developed countries. He is saying that we should not really rely on intoxicating substances. Removal of untouchability. And untouchability is not just an Indian problem, it is the world problem. We know we have some people are touchables and some people are untouchables. So I think he was really into looking at how we equalize the human playing field, that we are humans, all of us. Village sanitation. So again, he's going into very, very fine level, the cleanliness that we sometimes forget, that even now, if you go to many places, that the cleanliness is a problem. And when Gandhi was experiencing the plague, he was in several plagues that he talked about in 1906, in 1920, and how he talks about sanitation is very, very powerful to hear at that time, his emphasis on cleanliness. Now with COVID, we all talk about washing hands, and we didn't have sanitizer the way we have, but cleanliness he really emphasized on. Equality of women, adult education. He said it was never too late to read, write, and be an educated citizen. And pride in national languages, not only just Hindi, and different regional languages as well. So I want to just focus on, if any questions so far? All good? So as we go on, I'm just going to take up on a few of these ideas for 10 minutes. So what does he say about untouchability? Now, these are the ideas I'm quoting from toward the end of his life in 1947. If we believe in nonviolence and truth, we should make no discrimination between high and low, and should have no false sense of superiority. We should regard the whole world as a family and live like members of one family. How do we do that? How will the world look like if I consider everyone as my family? Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. How will the world look like? Not just lip service to it, just to think about how challenging prospect idea that he's putting forth for us. Then equal treatment of women. A lot of people, criticize Gandhi for not going far enough, but I have done extensive research on Gandhi and women's question. And I started with the thesis that, well, maybe he didn't do enough. And then I ended up with very different thesis, that how he organically wanted to bring women. He didn't want to just do through laws. He wanted to empower women. He didn't want them to feel like they're victims. No, he said, they are the goddesses. You are the one Shaktis. You need to just realize your power. You don't have to ask men to give you power. Different way of going about it, not through legislations, but it's through empowerment. Men and women will attain equality only when the birth of a girl is celebrated with as much joy as the case of a boy. We all know, who are born and raised in India, how it works many times, right? I personally experienced it, and I'm not that old, but I experienced it. I have those feelings in my heart. But he's really going to the crux of the problem. The family, when a baby girl is born, how do you not only just be okay with that, celebrate as much as you celebrate a boy's birth, right? And I'm not sure even today, of course, it's many changes have happened, but and in some societies, there's a discrimination. Every worker, therefore, should respect women as his mother, sister, or daughter. The way we are dishonoring them shows the extent of meanness and bestiality. Think there is no redemption for this sin. He calls it a sin. And this is the time in 1947, India, Pakistan is divided, and many women become the victims of violence. So he's listening to these stories of women, and he's saying, the sin you're committing, there's no redemption from it. So he's not mincing any words. He has been very direct about it. So then the spinning is a very interesting, and Tagore said, why is he so thinking about spinning? We are not weavers. But what's the Gandhi's idea of spinning is? My faith is being strengthened. Sorry, to move this. My faith is being strengthened every day that no one need to buy an inch of cloth if everyone flies the Charkhadili just for half an hour. So we put our own clothes made by our own hands. We don't need to buy. And what will happen then, the industries of textile, which has been imported to India now, people don't need to buy it. So he's looking at the whole person and economy, not just simply spinning. Not only that, this is a key to the preservation of Swaraj. Again, self-rule, how I rule on my desires. If the crores of people devoted half an hour to spinning, its results would amaze the whole world. There is no alternative to khadi, which is again cotton, hand-spun cloth, for bettering the lot of famishing millions. A number of industries have developed in the wake of khadi, which provide livelihood to artisans like carpenters, blacksmiths, peasants, weavers, and so on. So it starts from you do in personal life, half an hour, then comes to this whole industry that you can develop industries, local industries here by spinning. You will be dyeing clothes, you'll be making prints, all of this will be homegrown and for self-rule. Then communal harmony is a very important. We talk about interfaith movements now. Gandhi was, I think, the father of the interfaith or interreligious movements. And again, I have done a lot of research on that. The way he was talking about bringing communities together, it was pretty, very ahead of his time. So there are innumerable communities like Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, Sikhs, and others in India. And unless all the communities are united, we shall continue to be weak and sickly. That is to say, we shall remain slaves. Even if we achieve independence, there will be no happiness in it. I mean, this is just, the words are so direct and so straight goes. There's no words you can take it away from these sentences. And that is so true right now in India and the world. We may have freedoms and political freedom, but we are, the society is hurting. It's called sickly. They're weak, and because we are not united, we are too divided on the name of religion and caste and culture and color. And then village sanitation. So long as enough attention is not paid towards sanitation of villages, the inhabitants will never have purity of heart, and their condition will be symbolized by the garbage dumps one finds in the villages. Ooh, this is harsh. Because what he's saying that we need to uplift the village life. What happens? We need to train, we need to educate, we need to, health issues, our health problems are happening because of lack of sanitation. The child mortality, and the women were ill and die in childbirth, all is this happening because of lack of sanitation. So he goes into in great details. And then, of course, intoxication. Intoxicants have impoverished us physically as well as economically. Ours is not a cold climate where drinking or alcohol may be necessary. It's very interesting that he's recognizing. So he's not saying, okay, maybe Europe and America and other people may drink some, alcohol, but I'm not going to say to Indians because it's not necessary. So he's not going into the pleasure of drinking. He's going to the very practical, saying that, no, you guys don't need it. And then he says, impoverished us physically and mentally. Then he's very interestingly, he rejects communist approach and embraces moral methods. So what he says, we are showing a leaning toward Russian communism, which draws its strength from the pistol. That is the way of violence, even if they have not proved successful as yet. So he is not going to go to communism? Some people asked him, there was a lot of conversation. So you are really pushing for communism or Marxism. He said, no, mine idea is different. Instead, we propagate economic equality through nonviolent means, as suggested by me. These capitalists will, out of shame, realize their extravagance. Well, the critics of Gandhi would say, well, they don't, right? The people will continue to indulge in their extravagant lifestyles and they will never give. And there's a truth to it. And that's what I call it, moral challenges that we have with Gandhi's idea of Swaraj, Sarvodaya, because he's really counting on people to change of heart. For that, you have to continue working and continue lobbying for that. And otherwise, people will not share their means. So he said this will naturally foster a feeling of fraternity and serve the larger interest of nation, which the students were asking in question in 1947. So let's do just 2 more slides. I have many more slides so that we can start question. And if you have any question that I can answer through slides, then I'll do that. So let's, this one. So what is that, the constructive program, civil disobedience instead of armed revolt? He is, again, is speaking with the communist model. He says some concrete steps for the rights of laborers. In a concrete form, labor should have its own unions. So it's very interesting that he is saying that the unions will be helpful to get labor's rights. Education, both general and scientific, of both men and women should be regularly undertaken through night schools. He knows there are many men and women get married when they're young, their children are young. So he said, okay, the evening classes should be. Now what we are doing community colleges, what we're doing now, a lot of adults are going back to school. And not only just general scientific education as well. Children of laborers should be educated after the basic education style. There should be a hospital, a crèche, and maternity home attached to every center. Goodness gracious, let's talk about healthcare. How he is imagining that every city, every town, every region should be equipped with hospital and a child care and maternity home so that the women, kids can be taken care of. And labor strike can be an option if they don't get what they need to get. But end of the day, removal of poverty was very important for Gandhi because that really dehumanizes us, who we are, and does not let us realize our full potential as a human being. Unless poverty and unemployment are wiped out from India, I would not agree that we have attained freedom. So that would be a good question. Have we attained Swaraj? Real wealth does not consist in jewelry and money, but in providing for proper food, clothes, education, and creating healthy conditions for living for every one of us. So what he says, Earth provides enough resources for everyone's need, but not everyone's greed. So I'm going to stop here. Like I said, I have 10 more slides, but I'm not going to go any longer. And then I can answer questions because it's 2:43 and I want to leave ample time for questions.
We still have a little bit more time. We have until about 6:10, 6:15. So if you want to share a few more slides, Professor Howard, please feel free to do so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So the constructive program is appeal to the heart. And there is a difference between what we do, how we think is social change and how Gandhi is imagining a social change. So what princes and capitalists must live as a perfect friends with the whole mass of India as the real and legal trustees of the people for all the wealth they may possess. So he's calling out to, our Tesla people and Amazon, asking us to be friends and give it to people. You don't need $100 billion. Why do you? Okay, And that's the good point, right? But the people don't do this. And that's the sad part of the reality. The real socialism has been handed down to us by an ancestor who taught all land belongs to God, where then is the boundary line. So he's looking at the scriptures, he's looking at the traditions, he's not looking at the laws and legal way to give people what they need, but through calling the hearts of people. The fault is not in the teaching, it is in us, of course. And how do we change us as a society? That's a big question. I have no doubt that if we can make as good as an approach to it for any nation, not excluding Russia, and that without violence. So we can even teach Russia, we can even teach those communist countries, and with nonviolence, and teach them how we can do without violence. So again, he's been very, very active, but he talks about voluntary and nonviolent program, Gandhi's instructions for constructive workers. So he asks people his followers to be servants, volunteer yourself in the villages. There were thousands of people in 40s were volunteering. So what instruction he is giving? Civil disobedience, mass or individual, is an aid to constructive effort and is a full substitute for armed revolt. Training is necessary as well for civil disobedience as for armed revolt. Only the ways are different. So he's really, now we all know, this is now 44, right? That how armed revolt versus nonviolent civil disobedience. And he says that is a lot more effective, and the ways are different. They're asking for both the same things, but the ways, and that is the means and the ends. The means has to be pure. The nonviolence has to be always in the front, in the fore, in order to get what we want. So the limited success of Sarvodaya movement, some examples of moral transformation, Vyokam Satyagraha, that he did fight against untouchability. He wanted to change the hearts of the Brahmins and the high caste people, and the temple door opens up, even though the scholar says the success was very limited and critics say there was not enough. But we know the history says that there was a big change happened because of his Satyagraha. Women's participation in the Free India during the movement and afterwards. India remains pluralistic in religion, but communal challenges persist. So it is that India is so diverse. I mean, you can't even imagine one country having such a diversity, but still there's a lot more work to be done to have a complete communal harmony. And the Bhudan movement, which was a land gift of Vinoba Bhave, who went to village asking the landowners to adopt him as their son and give that amount of land to him that he'll give it to the poor. So these are the limited success of Gandhi's Sarvodaya, but the promise and his vision is really behooves us, really invites us to think about the elements that he has presented to us in his teaching, especially toward the end of his life. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Howard. That was really a rich presentation with lots of food for thought. If anyone has questions, you can please feel free to put them in the chat. And if you feel you'd like to speak, then that's also fine. We can try to unmute also and have a more lively discussion. As we were discussing, we like to do that. And students in class, as we do in class, and share our feelings and thoughts, please feel free. Christian, I see you responding. So if anyone has any question, you can use the raise hand function and I can call on you, or you can put the question directly in the chat. And maybe to start things off, one thing, in the beginning you were showing the t-shirts and, this kind of appropriation of Gandhi. Now he's like a meme, it's just like an idea. And we kind of, when we make something into those kinds of symbols, we sometimes lose the real heart of the message and how it really is calling us to a type of action. And that action is not wearing a t-shirt, but actually changing our lives. And I think that was an important point to make. And the other thing that really resonated is just how relevant Gandhi is today after 100 years, maybe even more relevant, because the kind of structures are in a sense more reified now. We need this kind of thinking even more. And as you were saying, Sarvodaya, so much of it was to remedy the inequality, and particularly economic inequality. And that's a buzzword right now, particularly in this country, of course, everywhere in the world. But that disparity, income disparity, and the gap has only grown larger and larger. So I think everything that you presented is just so relevant to today, and I'm sure your students and feel that, and I think most of us here listening today also felt that so much resonance with the material they presented. So thank you very, very much.
Yes, and that's the whole idea. Some thought even the Gandhi is sending us the Middle Ages. They said, "Oh, your ideas are so old. You want us to spin. You want us to." But what was the symbolism? The ideas were misunderstood then because we were so much into getting ahead, economic progress. And now everyone is thinking about, well, if we can walk, we don't need to take the car. And Gandhi walked 10 kilometers a day, each day. And he walked whenever he could. The voice staff will send him a car, he would just get off and walk. So I think all this, that's what I think fascinating for me in my life, that from even when growing up in India to now, how my thinking has changed about him. Yeah. Right? You just saw, that's why I started with that statue, that you saw him in the schools, in the statues or the pictures and in the principal's office, but you have no connection with the man, right? Because you didn't think about it. And then when you came here far away from your homeland, then you began to think more deeply about, and then something more happens last 10 years. With this whole idea of global warming and climate change, and we have limited resources and we need to simplify. And if now a CEO comes in a cotton hand-spun kurta and shows up, they will go, "Oh my God, he's so great. Tomorrow will be a design and we'll have it make more." So I think it's the idea that how ahead of his time he was. Yeah. So the question also I ask, maybe that can help more, and I have some questions in the chat as well, that what do we make out of his moral, appeal to the moral self, instead of as much, of course he was into the social change through legal methods and legislatures, but his appeal to the moral self and changing the inner person, I really think about it because that's my topic of Gandhi's ascetic activism and how he uses morality as the compass, not just simply I make you give your helper $10 or $15 because you want to give that person. You want to give a little more because you feel this is the right thing to do. Right. And so I think this is how do we get to that state? How do we get to that mindset? A lot of people, but they say, even 3 out of 10, the world will change. We don't need everyone. Yeah. They did these studies. 3 out of 10 people can stand up. We have tipped the balance. Yeah. So it's quite interesting. So let's ask a question.
Beautiful. Yeah, we can go to Belaji. You want to ask your question?
So this is such a wonderful presentation, and thank you for bringing the ideas of constructive program to us today. And the way you explained about communal harmony was very impressive. And thank you for this presentation. I just had a quick question. I mean, I know Gandhiji is so forward-looking. His ideas about reducing carbon footprint, that we are discussing today in today's world, was something that he discussed so many years back, even before that idea had taken root in the world or anyone was discussing it, he was already on it, which is really great. So I just have a quick question, because it always bothers me, and I thought this is a good forum where I can address it directly to you, Veena-ji. And I always have this conflict. Yeah, I agree that at the village level, spinning, being self-reliant is important. But if everyone in the country was to spin, they would have just enough for themselves. But how would the economy of the country run on that? Because, you need more than that to be able to trade, with items that the whole country requires, not just you as the individual. So if you could
And
throw
thank
some
you for your question. This is excellent. So if you remember my slides, on the one hand, I had a slide that you should spin. On the other hand, there was a slide, labor strikes. So labor mill owners. So he is not rejecting. There are mill workers, right? I mean, they're making textile, there is a businesses going on. So he's not against businesses. He's against greed.
Right.
He's not against wealth. He's against hoarding.
right.
So I think what happens, a lot of us, when we look at that, we just suddenly, including me, react with this, like, how is going to happen? India would not have been economic power. He doesn't believe that kind of power anyways. He knows what has happened to the powers in the world. He's really relying on moral power. Look at what is happening in our world right now. What kind of all health crisis, mental, health crisis. We have poverty. We are such a rich country in this world. It doesn't solve the problem. So what he's trying to do is inviting us to think about a more holistic program, which has balance of power. He was not against police either. He was not against having our own security forces because he knew there was a reality there.
Right.
He rather didn't have, but he knew the reality is you have to have them. So when he's working with Birla, right? He's working with the Birlas.
Yeah.
Working with this woman, Ambalal Desai's wife, just wrote a 25,000 rupees check in 1918. That is lakhs and lakhs of rupees right now. So he's not against wealth. He's not against economic progress. He's against untethered progress, which is what we're seeing right now. What is happening to our world? We are wasting, we're making it. And then we all know, now it's not a secret anymore. It's in the last 70 years, it has come out that what we are doing, it is not working.
Right.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So we have two related questions from two students from class, and I would invite Noah and directly after that, Christian. If you can just read out your questions, that would be great. So we can also just hear from you. And it's kind of related to these ideas that are circulating even now about, socialism, social democratism. What does it mean? How does this relate to communism, capitalism, all of these kinds of issues? So Noah, if you could first ask your question, and then we'll go directly to Christian to ask yours. And then Dr. Howard can respond hopefully to both of them simultaneously. Noah?
Sure. So my question was about his rejection of communism. Was that rooted in the way that it was playing out in Russia, or about the fundamentals of communism in like a holistic sense, in a more broad sense?
Good question. And following up on that is Christian.
Well, I noticed like a lot of his views on labor, specifically with like the barber analogy, were sort of similar to people like Karl Marx. So I was wondering if that was a coincidence, or if his ideas were sort of iterative on those like principles or like previous socialist thought.
Wonderful.
Great question. So how much Gandhi has been influenced by Marx and the communist ideas, or he is coming on by himself, right? So that's a great question. And he has read Marx. He says, I've read Marx, and he read several books on, because he's if you want me to give me your email, I'll send you his conversations about communism. And so I think nothing is developing in vacuum, no ideas that he's just, just coming out of nowhere. He says the nonviolence is as old as the hills, and, so it's not that he's taking any credit for those. So it is, all this, he has Marxist friends, he's a communist students who are coming to him from Shantiniketan, those questions from the students in Calcutta. But he's looking at it and he's saying, no, this is not going to work. I think Noah's question was that his rejection was that how it is playing out, the violence and hatred and anger for the capitalists or the rich. He didn't want that. He wanted to he didn't want anybody to be his enemy. He wanted all to be friends. That's why my another 4 or 6, 7 slides go into appealing to moral self, and that, Marx won't go there. And so here is, the Marx will say, just you have to take it, you have to find ways to just demand it, right? Here it is, how can I persuade you that that person becomes so generous and say, oops, I understand now. I have to share my wealth with others. So he is going with that idea, but he likes the idea of the shared, resources, that when he says there is no, God did not make any boundaries, right? I mean, he is going into, yet he's a nationalist, right? He wants India to be free. If he really thinks that we all are one, then he will say, British, please stay here. We are friends. No, so we have to put in the context that he wants friendship, but he wants to demarcate the lines as well. And always the paradoxes emerge when you are thinking about those ideas. He is against violence. That's the number one thing that he has a big difference between. And he is also not happy that there is no religion and morality built into those ideologies. So those two ways that he's very different from what's going on, Marxism and communism, that spirituality, he's very deep-rooted in spirituality. He goes to the whole artisan family. He goes into the Hindu dictum. He goes to the Jain idea of many-sidedness of the truth. He goes into this Indian spiritual, or even the Christian resource, turning the other cheek. He doesn't want to reject religion. He doesn't want to reject spirituality. He wants to build on that and wants to appeal to the best of each one of us. I hope that helped. This
Wonderful.
is a question that I am still confused on, why there is hatred against Gandhi.
Yeah, that was the
That
next
is
question.
$1 million question, and I am also thinking about it, but I am not surprised. If you look at all great leaders in the world, they all been hated, right? And then because he is kind of such a, look at his ideas, and he does not go into, even though he calls himself Hindus, he wants to be so charitable to Muslims, and that is a problem for some. Or he had some views when he was, 19-year-old about some South Africans, and the people want to bring that up. All his life of work, they want to just throw that away, and Gandhi was a racist. It's like, what? We all have, when young people, we all grow out of our, and he was, the word between racist and saying a racial things or names is very different things. So I have written about that as well. And there is some very good articles on how people will kill Gandhi over and over again, because he's such a threat. He is so challenging for you,
Right.
us, that he just challenges you. And when you see, and we feel just like so inadequate, and he challenges everyone. So there is a few books and articles on why Gandhi, there's one article, Vinelal, why Gandhi, everyone loves to hate. So, there is everybody finds kind of strong, all problems are like, he's our daddy, all what's wrong happened with me is because of my Gandhi, because he was our father of the nation. That's what happened, partition. That's what happened, violence at the border. That's what happened, we are, so I think is the lot of misunderstanding, lot of politics, those who hate Gandhi, I went to a few events and they had this very hateful posters about Gandhi. And I asked them, I said, I didn't tell them I was a scholar of Gandhi. I said, oh, so what's going on here? And he said, oh, Gandhi was racist. And I said, oh my goodness, that's awful. Can you tell me, what have you read that it tells you about racism? No, I haven't read anything, but my uncle told me. I said, can you ask your uncle if he has read something? No, my uncle didn't read anything. Somebody else told him. So this is, you know, is a narrative that has been pushed because of politics, because of personal reasons might be, you know, there can be several different, you know, we can't pinpoint one thing. So that was a good question. Yes. Thank you.
Wonderful. Would anyone else like to ask a question?
Yeah, I also had a question.
Yes, this is Shai.
Shai, yes.
Yes, hi. Please go
Um,
ahead.
Yeah, so I think that brought up a really good point. I'm like, I was really interested in the conflict between kind of like the narratives about Gandhi, why there were like particular hatred towards him. I think that like over the summer of last year, there was a lot of conversations about that, but like particularly from the Sikh community. Is there any like I don't know, can we expand upon that? Like, what does that mean? Because I know that the Sikh community were also like a lot of them fled from East India, right? Because they were being yeah. So I'm sorry. It's just I'm not sure how to like word it. I'm just interested in yeah.
Thank you, Shai. It's good to have you here. I'm glad you could come. He's my student as well. So, and he's very active in the Cross-Cultural Gender Center. Appreciate your comment. And you ask again, good question. We at Fresno State, we have this issue as well. We have a peace garden and the Gandhi statue and Martin Luther King Jr., Cesar Chavez and Jane Addams. And there was a really resurgence of the narrative that Gandhi is racist and Gandhi is his statue should not be here, and hence you see what happened in Davis. We don't know we don't have any facts yet who demolished the statue, but that's it's a very complex question about. I don't want to simplify it since you asked about the push by the Sikh community in the United States. And could be there was a lot of grievances against Gandhi's, not Mahatma Gandhi necessarily, Gandhi's in Indira Gandhi because of 1984 massacre. And so I am also Punjabi, so I speak Punjabi fluently. I go to gurdwaras, I go different places, and I hear the narratives and I keep track of. But it's just just to simplify it, it is really misinformation and misunderstanding. And sometimes he becomes a straw man for all things India that you hate or don't like about the government. The government didn't like what Indira Gandhi. Someone told me once, he said, oh, wasn't Indira Gandhi's daughter? I said, no. He goes, but she has a Gandhi name. I said, yes. And so can you. Anybody can have a Gandhi name, last name, can adopt. So there's a lot of misinformation, misunderstanding, other issues about Indian politics in partition time, the partition of India, the lot of pain, they get all conflated. And who is that? You see a person, a face is Gandhi. Okay, let's hit him. That will be feel better. You know, all kind of he's such a face of India and all over the world, and he has made such an impact. Regardless of, he was not a perfect man. We all know that. He will be the first one to admit that he was not a perfect man. He always made mistakes, and he was the one who recognized his mistakes and admitted his mistakes and tried to learn from them, right? So we cannot say Gandhi was born perfect when he never made any mistake when she was 2-year-old, 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 9-year-old, 19 or 28. He was just perfect human being. Show me in the world if there is ever, he is the only one who documented them himself, got in trouble himself. You know, what we do in our autobiographies, we hide those things. We really bring beautiful things about our lives, what we did, and a little bit of mistakes, but we sanitize them. He brought the things what he did wrong in his life, his own words. And if he had not written them, we will never found out. So I just say, Gandhi, why did you do that? Okay, now I have to answer all these questions for you. But I think it is that's the cost of speaking truth, as we know. And that's the cost of being moral, is the cost of being this kind of personality who is fearless. And I always imagine when that statue fell, it really hit your heart. The way that it was fallen was like broke his legs and broke his head, beheaded him. First was like a pain in the heart to see that statue, right? It's just neighbor, 2.5 hour drive from me. Then I felt like nobody can kill him. Nobody can hurt him. It is the spirit, it's the teaching of Sir Gandhi that one should think about. It's the education, what we are doing right now. That is the value. This image will come and go, but it is the thought, is the constructive program. It is the equality of all beings, it's the uplift of all beings, it's the nonviolence, it's that the laborer has the same dignity as a doctor, a professor has. So that ideas that I feel like Gandhi's living, not in the statues. I hope that helps, Shai. I know it's a difficult question.
That was a beautiful answer, I think, actually. And how you know, even in the beginning of Hind Swaraj, you know, he says, what I'm writing here, I probably won't think in the future. And, you know, my opinions are changing. And I think that's one of the great lessons of Gandhi's life, is that, you know, experiment of truth, is that we're constantly experimenting. We're constantly evolving. His opinions, his ideas changed over time. So we're all in a process of growth. And yeah, if there's any, maybe one last question, if anyone has, we can take that. Or we can end here with a great amount of gratitude for Professor Howard for absolutely wonderful talk. There's many, many messages here thanking you for such a wonderful presentation and an inspiring, you know, gift of this like richness for our thoughts. So thank you very, very much, everyone. We can give
so
our
much. I appreciate that, and thank you, Bela. Thank you, all of you at the center. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.